May the peace of Christ and the gentle light of benevolent spirits embrace your heart in this sacred moment of reflection. My dear friend, today we will speak about something you may have hidden your entire life, something that caused others to call you weak, too sensitive, dramatic, though. You cry easily and perhaps you never understood why. How many times have you been told to stop crying so much? How many times were you advised to swallow your tears, harden your chest, hide your emotions so you would not appear fragile? And how often did you feel wrong, broken, misplaced, simply because you felt too deeply? But what if your tears are not a flaw? What if they are a sign? There are spiritual teachings that suggest sensitivity is not weakness, it is awareness. Many spiritual traditions, including those inspired by mediums such as Chico Xavier, speak of something rarely understood, the idea that deep sensitivity can be a mark of a soul that has journeyed far. According to Spiritist philosophy, organized by Allan Kardec, nothing in the life of the soul is random. Experiences shape us beyond one lifetime. What we feel today may echo from paths once walked before. So when tears come easily, it may not be weakness, it may be memory. Have you ever cried during a simple movie scene while others felt nothing? Have you ever felt your chest tighten at the sight of a stranger's suffering? Have you woken up with tears in your eyes without knowing why? You may have asked yourself, why do I feel this way? What is wrong with me? Perhaps nothing is wrong. Perhaps your soul simply remembers how to feel in a world that has learned to numb itself. There are accounts shared by spiritual teachers like Divaldo Franco describing individuals whose intense emotions were later understood as spiritual impressions, deep imprints carried from profound past experiences. Whether one interprets these stories literally or symbolically, the message remains powerful. Sensitivity can be depth, not disorder. Spiritist thought teaches that the spirit carries impressions, vibrations shaped by love, pain, compassion, and sacrifice. These impressions influence how we respond to life. Some return with hearts more permeable, more open, more attuned to invisible frequencies of emotion. You do not cry for nothing. You feel because your inner world is alive. Your tears may be your soul whispering, I recognize this. I have known this pain. I remember compassion. In a society that praises hardness, sensitivity becomes misunderstood. Men are told they must not cry. Women are labeled unstable if they feel too much. Yet tears are not weakness. They are the language of the heart. To feel deeply is not to be fragile. It is to be connected. If you are someone who feels everything intensely, perhaps you are not broken. Perhaps you are awake. And if this message resonates with you, hold this word in your heart. I feel. Because to feel is to remain human. To feel is to remain compassionate. To feel is to remain spiritually alive. Your tears are not a defect. They are bridges between what is seen and what is unseen. They are not a burden, they are a gift. Excessive sensitivity is one of those marks carried by the soul. So do not blame yourself for feeling too much. You are not broken. You may be more whole than you realize. You simply remember what the world has forgotten. There are spiritual perspectives that suggest some souls return to earthly life carrying deep emotional imprints from previous experiences. Long periods of pain, regret, loss, or intense learning can leave subtle impressions. The mind may not recall them, but the heart reacts. In the book series Na Solar, attributed to the spirit André Louise and psychographed by Chico Xavier, there is a powerful idea. The spiritual body, often called the perispirit, retains the marks of past experiences like invisible scars. These impressions shape a person's sensitivity. According to this view, souls who have endured great suffering often return more empathetic, more impressionable, more emotionally open. Crying easily may indicate a heart that has already known pain. Someone who has experienced loneliness may recognize it instantly in another's eyes. Someone who has made mistakes may judge others less harshly. There is a saying attributed to Chico in private conversations. The most sensitive spirits are those who have passed through fire. When they return, they no longer burn, but they still feel the warmth from afar. Spiritual memory rarely comes as clear images. It comes as sensations, a tightness in the chest, an unexplained sadness, tears that rise without warning. Sometimes the root of that feeling may lie beyond this lifetime, at least within the symbolic language of spiritual philosophy. There are also therapeutic accounts of individuals who, through deep psychological work, uncovered symbolic narratives of past suffering that help them understand their present emotional intensity. Whether interpreted spiritually or psychologically, the meaning remains transformative. When you feel something without an apparent reason, you may not be inventing it. You may be remembering. The spirit remembers before the mind does, and the heart, faithful to the soul, responds with tears. In this light, crying is not weakness. It is active memory. It is proof that your soul has not gone numb in a world that often has. But there is something even deeper. Have you ever been calm at home when suddenly tears came, without personal sadness, without a clear cause? You wondered, what is happening to me? Within Spiritist teachings organized by Allan Kardec, there is the concept of vibrational attunement. Some individuals are described as naturally receptive, almost like emotional antennas. They perceive subtle atmospheres, collective emotions, even the psychological weight present in certain environments. In work Psychographed by Divaldo Franco, attributed to the spirit Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, there are explanations suggesting that sensitive individuals may unconsciously absorb surrounding emotional states. This can manifest as sudden anguish, chest pressure, or unexplained tears. From a spiritual interpretation, this is not imbalance. It is untrained sensitivity. Think of it like this. When dense emotional environments surround you, places of suffering, hospitals, cemeteries, or even rooms filled with silent grief, you may perceive what others do not consciously notice. Some people report crying in hospitals without knowing why. Others feel overwhelming sadness near places marked by loss. Within spiritual philosophy, this is described as mediumistic sensitivity in a passive state, active but not yet understood or directed. The key teaching, however, is not fear. It is education. When sensitivity is understood and guided through prayer, meditation, grounding practices, emotional boundaries, it transforms from confusion into compassion. Instead of drowning in what you feel, you learn to create what some traditions call a vibrational shield, intention, inner calm, connection to higher thoughts. The problem is not feeling too much. The problem is not knowing what to do with what you feel. You are not ill because you cry. You are perceptive, and spiritual sensitivity, when matured and balanced, becomes a tool for healing, comfort, and support for others. You feel before you understand. You cry before you know why. And that can be frightening, especially in a world that does not teach us about emotional or spiritual perception. But now you are beginning to understand. Your sensitivity is not a curse. It is potential, and when guided with awareness, it becomes light. Because there is more. Before the mind understands, the heart has already perceived. That is the mark of those who feel deeply. Have you ever sensed something bad before it happened? Felt an urge to call someone, only to discover later they needed you? Experienced a tightness in your chest and hours later received sad news? Some spiritual traditions would not call this coincidence. They would call it refined perception. Within Spiritist philosophy shaped by Allan Kardec, there is the idea that certain souls perceive beyond the five physical senses. They feel with the soul, and the soul, when disciplined and balanced, can become remarkably intuitive. Accounts about Chico Xavier often describe this quality, not as something supernatural or theatrical, but as cultivated sensitivity. He was known for humility, prayer, service, and attention to others. People close to him said he could sense when someone was silently suffering, not because he performed miracles, but because he listened deeply. There are stories of him pausing during gatherings and gently saying that someone present was in deep sorrow, only for a hidden grief to surface. Whether one interprets such moments spiritually or psychologically, the lesson remains powerful. When the heart is trained in compassion, it perceives what distraction overlooks. If you cry easily, you may also carry this capacity. Perhaps you have confused it with anxiety. Perhaps you have labeled it imbalance, but often it is intuition moving through your emotional body. You notice sadness behind forced smiles. You feel tension in rooms before a word is spoken. You sense when something is not right, even if you cannot explain why. The world praises logic, speed, productivity. The soul values presence. When you begin trusting what you feel, without losing balance, you transform sensitivity into service. You become someone who calls at the right moment. Someone who sits beside another without trying to fix them, simply offering warmth. Someone who brings calm into chaos. In many spiritual teachings, there is the belief that some souls incarnate with tasks linked to comfort, listening, and quiet support, not to shine publicly, not to accumulate wealth, but to be presence, to be shelter, to be attentive ears in a noisy world. Deep empathy is not a character flaw. It is often a sign of responsibility. There are people who return home exhausted not from physical labor, but from absorbing the anguish of everyone around them. The indebted client, the grieving widow, the anxious worker. Sensitivity can be draining when it lacks boundaries. And that is important. Feeling deeply does not mean neglecting yourself. Even Emmanuel, the spiritual mentor associated with Checo Xavier, taught that sensitive souls must learn protection through prayer, discipline, and emotional education. Compassion without structure leads to exhaustion. Compassion with awareness becomes light. Do not despise your empathy, but do learn to guard your energy, because the day you harden your heart completely, the world loses a quiet worker of goodness. Why then do sensitive people suffer so much today? We live in a dense emotional climate, competitive, hurried, appearance-driven, a culture that often rewards indifference and mocks vulnerability. In such an environment, sensitive souls experience constant friction. It can feel like being an orchid planted in the desert. The orchid is not weak. It simply requires a different climate. When your inner vibration does not match the collective noise around you, you may feel displaced, misunderstood, out of place. This can create sadness, internal conflict, and a sense of not belonging. But perhaps it is not that you were made wrong. Perhaps you were made rare. The solution is not to become stone. It is to find environments, practices, and people who nourish your frequency. Ground yourself, pray or meditate, set emotional boundaries, choose what you expose your heart to, serve but also rest, Sensitivity without guidance overwhelms. Sensitivity with wisdom transforms. You are not designed to compete with the noise, you are designed to soften it. And when you understand this, your tears stop being a mystery. They become part of your calling. So it will suffer, not because it is weak, but because it was not made for that environment. There is a teaching often attributed to Checo Xavier. The most sensitive spirits suffer more on earth precisely because they are more awake. They perceive dissonance. They sense falseness. They feel subtle forms of violence that pass unnoticed by others, and that hurts. Some spiritually oriented therapists observe that many deeply sensitive young people arrive believing they are only anxious or depressed. And sometimes they are, which deserves real care and professional support. But in certain cases, what they are experiencing is also emotional overload, absorbing collective tension, social pressure, unprocessed grief from their surroundings. This suffering, however, can have purpose. It prevents you from becoming numb. It prevents you from accepting injustice as normal. It keeps you connected to love, compassion, and truth. If you suffer more than others, it may not be weakness. It may be that you are too sensitive for a world that often feels too insensitive. And that is not fragility, it is spiritual resistance. And there is something else that brings relief. Crying releases, not only poetically, emotionally. When you cry, you discharge accumulated tension. Some traditions describe tears as spiritual cleansing, like rain washing dust from the air. After sincere tears, many people feel lighter. Something moved, something flowed. The body understands this. The soul understands this. Only a conditioned mind insists that crying is failure. Checo used to compare tears to rain that washes the soul. Without them, pain accumulates. Without them, anguish hardens. Without them, the spirit feels suffocated. There are also psychological explanations. Suppressing emotion for years can lead to panic, somatic symptoms, and exhaustion. Many people discover in therapy that what they needed was not more control, but safe release. So do not repress every tear. Let it cleanse. Let it move through you. A sincere tear can be a silent prayer, a cry for help the universe hears, a relief the body offers to an overloaded heart. Spiritist teachings go further. Elevated emotion can become silent intercession. When you cry for someone else's pain, you are, in a way, praying for them. You are generating vibrations of care, compassion, solidarity. And that matters. There is a belief in Spiritism that no sincere tear is wasted, that benevolent spirits gather them symbolically, transforming them into light in the spiritual plane. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, the message is beautiful. Empathy has value beyond what we see. But here is something essential. Spiritual understanding does not replace professional help. Some people believe they are broken. They seek doctors, psychologists, medication, and that can absolutely help. There is no contradiction between mental health care and spirituality. Both can walk together. However, when sensitivity is seen only as pathology, something feels incomplete. A young man once said that medication eased his anxiety, but what truly transformed him was understanding that he was highly intuitive, that he was absorbing external emotional stimuli, not only producing internal distress. You are not broken. You may possess a gift that was never explained to you. When a gift is misunderstood, it becomes heavy. When it is understood and educated, it becomes freeing. Many receive diagnoses of depression, anxiety, panic disorder, and those conditions are real and deserve treatment. But sometimes behind the symptoms, there is also untrained emotional or spiritual sensitivity. Do not ignore symptoms, but do not ignore the soul either. Chico often warned. Sensitivity requires direction, prayer, vigilance, grounding, and balance. The emotionally sensitive person suffers. In the messages attributed to Emmanuel, the spiritual mentor linked to Chico, it is repeatedly taught that feeling must walk alongside reason and discipline. Emmanuel compared the sensitive heart to fertile soil. If uncultivated, it produces weeds. If educated, it produces healing. Sensitivity without guidance becomes torment. Sensitivity with discipline becomes an instrument of light. This is the turning point. Your tears are not the problem. Lack of understanding is. When you learn to pray or meditate before entering heavy environments, when you set emotional boundaries, when you care for your mental health while nurturing your spiritual life, when you balance feeling with discernment, your sensitivity stops draining you. It starts serving through you. You were not given a soft heart to collapse under the weight of the world. You were given it to transform pain into compassion without losing yourself in the process, and that is both sacred and powerful. There are people who feel anguish, despair, waves of emotion so intense they fear they are losing control until they learn how to care for their sensitivity. Many who follow the teachings of Chico Xavier shared something in common: discipline, prayer before sleep, intentional thoughts, service to others, emotional responsibility. Chico himself lived with structure, rising early, praying, working, helping those in need, and resting at the right time. He understood that without balance, sensitivity can overwhelm. With discipline, it transforms, and transformation is the key. When you begin to understand your sensitivity instead of fighting it, something shifts. Your presence becomes calming. Your words become gentle medicine. Your silence becomes shelter. You become someone others feel safe around. Not because you stop feeling, but because you learn how to feel with wisdom. A therapist once said that her greatest professional tool was her sensitivity. She could perceive what her patients could not yet express. What once felt like a burden became her greatest strength. The healing is not in becoming numb. The healing is in learning how to feel without drowning. This is a reframing of spiritual identity. You are not wrong. The world has simply forgotten how to feel. You are not exaggerated. You are a living reminder that compassion is still possible. In a society that anesthetizes emotion, you are awareness. In an age of coldness, you are warmth. In a culture that teaches detachment, you demonstrate that feeling is sacred. Chico used to say that tears are the language of the soul, and the soul always speaks truth. Perhaps you were not meant to shine loudly in the eyes of the world. Perhaps you were meant to be quiet light, silent comfort, presence when everything else collapses. There is a spiritual idea that those who have known pain deeply are often the ones prepared to console others. Only those who have cried sincerely know how to wipe another person's tears with authenticity. Your sensitivity is not random. It is a calling. If this message resonates with you, receive it as affirmation. You are not broken. You are awake. The world needs people who still cry. It needs people who still care. It needs people who still feel. If you cry easily, perhaps you came to heal, to comfort, to hold space when others cannot. That is not a burden. It is sacred responsibility. But remember, care for yourself. Pray or meditate. Guard your thoughts. Choose nourishing environments. Seek professional help when needed. Balance heart and reason. As taught in messages attributed to Emmanuel, the spiritual mentor associated with Chico, feeling must walk alongside discipline. A sensitive heart is fertile soil. Neglected, it grows suffering. Cultivated, it grows healing. You were not given tears as weakness. You were given them as seeds. May you never feel ashamed of them. May you see them as language, as prayer, as cleansing rain. May your sensitivity become strength. May your compassion become light, and may you remember those who truly feel are often closer to what is highest and most loving within us. Your tears are sacred. They always were.